How many times have you said something in a moment of anger and later regretted it? We live surrounded by stimuli that push us to react words, judgments, provocations. But what few understand is that true strength is not in responding, but in knowing when not to. This is the power that transforms destinies, the power that lifts you above chaos. And in this story, a monk will discover that mastering inner silence can be more powerful than 1,000 words thrown in rage. Stay until the end. Because what you will learn here will not only change the way you face conflicts, but the way you govern your mind. From here on, you will begin to climb a ladder of wisdom. 8 lessons that are not only heard, they are felt. Lesson 1. When the world provokes you, your first battle is internal. In a monastery nestled among the mountains of Australia, where dawn seemed to paint the ancient rooftops gold, lived a monk known for his serenity. He never raised his voice, never seemed disturbed. But even the deepest peace can be tested. One afternoon, while teaching his disciples about patience, one of them, driven by envy, falsely accused him before the senior master of having broken a sacred rule. The rumor spread like fire through the temple corridors. Some began to doubt him, others quietly stepped away. The monk listened to everything without defending himself. He did not explain. He did not point fingers. He simply lowered his head and continued sweeping the garden as if nothing had happened. The younger disciples watched him in confusion. "Why don't you say anything?" they asked. And he replied calmly, "Because whoever seeks to justify himself when the heart is calm risks staining his truth with unnecessary words." The monk remembered the words of Buddha: victory over oneself is greater than victory over 1,000 men in 1,000 battles. And he understood that mastery of the mind is the supreme art of the inner warrior. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The noble person masters himself, and in that resides his strength." Self-control is not weakness. It is power in its purest form. Lesson 2. Not reacting is not surrendering. It is preserving your power. That night, while the monastery slept, the monk lit an oil lamp in front of a mirror. The flame danced in silence, reflecting itself again and again, and he thought, this is what the mind is like when it reacts. A flame that multiplies, distorts, and ends up consuming everything. He understood then that every time we react from impulse, we feed the flame of the ego. And the insatiable ego will always demand more defense, more being right, more pride. But when you choose silence, the fire extinguishes itself. When you choose calm, the reflection becomes clear again. The monk was not fleeing from conflict. He was winning an invisible battle. The battle of mastering his mind before his mind mastered him. Days passed. The rumor grew, and the pressure inside the monastery became unbearable. Some began to judge him openly, but he remained silent, observing, breathing, because sometimes the best response is the one that is not spoken, but demonstrated with time and truth. And as the wind moved the temple bells, the monk repeated to himself in silence, not reacting is not weakness. It is wisdom in its purest form. Buddha taught, anger is never extinguished by anger, it is extinguished by love. This is the eternal law. Thus the monk understood that responding from calm is a form of love toward oneself. Epictetus, centuries later, would confirm it. No one can harm you without your consent. And the monk understood that conscious silence is not submission. On the contrary, it is spiritual sovereignty. What happens next will test everything the monk believes. Next, you will discover how silence becomes his greatest teacher and how the heart, even when wounded, can continue to be a refuge of light. Lesson 3: Silence is a mirror. It reflects what others cannot accept about themselves. The monk's silence turned into murmurs. Some began to say that his calm was a sign of guilt, others that his serenity was a form of manipulation. The truth is that when you choose not to react, the world reacts for you. People who do not understand peace fear it, because silence is a mirror, and there are those who cannot bear to see themselves reflected. The monk felt the weight of the stairs. His hands trembled as he held the broom. Inside, the fire of injustice threatened to ignite. Outside, he continued breathing slowly, deeply. That night he wrote in his notebook, "I am learning that calm is not the absence of emotions, but the ability not to let them govern me." Buddha said, "Do not wound with your words, because they are arrows that do not return." The monk observed that silence was not emptiness. It was a shield that reflects the truth. Seneca taught, "Sometimes remaining silent is not a lack of arguments, but an excess of wisdom." And so the monk learned that whoever masters his tongue also masters his destiny. Pause, breathe, and think how many times you reacted unnecessarily. Write it in the comments and share this moment with someone who needs to recover their calm. Lesson 4. When you choose calm, you disarm the storm. Days later, the disciple who had accused him approached while the monk was meditating by the river in Australia. "Why do you remain silent?" "Dan," he said arrogantly, "don't you have anything to say? Don't you care about your reputation?" The monk opened his eyes calmly, looked at the disciple's reflection in the water, and replied, "When the water is agitated, you cannot see the bottom. If I speak now, my words would be like stones. They would only muddy the river further." The disciple smiled ironically. "Then you will continue to be accused." "Perhaps," said the monk, "but if my heart remains clean, time will be my witness." The wise do not react because they trust the truth. Those who react do so because they fear losing it. Buddha had said, "In a calm mind, the entire universe is reflected without distortion." The monk looked at the river water and understood that serenity is its own power. Marcus Aurelius agreed, "The soul is dyed the color of your thoughts." And he decided that calm was not an escape. Calm was the bravest act in the face of chaos. If you have made it this far, do not leave. What comes next is a teaching that will transform the way you respond to life. Lesson 5. Not reacting does not hurt less, but it makes you wiser. Days passed and the tension grew. The monk was removed from his duties. He no longer taught, no longer shared meals with the others. His world shrank to the garden and his breathing. And although outwardly he seemed at peace, inwardly he lived a battle. At times his mind shouted, "Defend yourself. Speak. Do not let them humiliate you." But in the deepest part of his being, he felt his soul say, "Trust. Everything falls will fall by its own weight." And he chose to listen to his soul. One dawn, while sweeping in the rain, he fell to his knees and wept, not from sadness. He wept from emotion, from wisdom, from understanding. He had discovered that not reacting was not remaining silent in the face of injustice. It was responding from a higher place, a wiser, freer one. The senior master, seeing his constancy, began to observe him in secret. Day after day, he watched him sweep, care for the temple, help in silence. Until one afternoon, the disciple who had accused him could no longer bear it and confessed the truth. The master approached the monk and asked him, "Why did you not speak? Why did you bear the weight of unjust judgment?" And the monk replied calmly, "Because sometimes the soul grows more in silence than in defense. If I had reacted, I would have lost my peace. And without peace, even truth becomes noise." The master bowed his head. He understood. Only the one who masters the impulse to respond also masters the course of his destiny. Buddha taught, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The monk embraced that truth and understood that every wound could be a teacher in disguise. Epictetus would say, centuries later, it is not things that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. And he understood that pain is only unbearable when you face it without awareness. If this teaching touched something within you, leave your mark in the comments. Share it with someone who is learning, like you, to master their inner world. Lesson 6. The soul is strengthened in the silences no one sees. The rumor had died, but something new had been born within the monk. He was no longer the same man who swept in silence. Now he understood that true mastery is not in controlling others. True mastery lies in governing one's own mind. The master, moved by his wisdom, asked him to speak before all the disciples. And the monk, standing before the temple, began by saying, "For days I was judged and pointed at. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to shout, but I chose silence, not out of fear, but because I understood that when the mind reacts, the soul closes. And when you choose silence, the soul opens." He looked at his former accuser and added, "I hold no resentment, because the one who hurt me was my teacher in disguise." Thanks to him, I learned that compassion is not born from tranquility. It is born from pain transformed. The disciple wept. The master bowed his head, and in that instant, the entire temple was filled with a different silence. Not the silence of repression, it was the silence of peace. Buddha had said, meditate, because inner silence will lead you to the dwelling of peace. The monk discovered that the longest silences are the ones that teach the most. Seneca wrote, "The tranquility of the soul is not found in the noise of triumphs. It is found in the harmony of reason." And the monk understood that growing in silence is preparing to speak with wisdom. Prepare yourself. You are about to discover the deepest secret of self-control. A truth so simple and powerful that it could change your inner destiny. Lesson 7. Between impulse and reaction, your freedom exists. That night, as the wind moved the lanterns of the monastery in Australia, the monk wrote his final reflection. When you react, you give away your power. When you respond from calm, you reclaim it. Between the stimulus and your reaction, there is a space, and in that space lives your freedom. That is the teaching few manage to see. Freedom does not consist in doing whatever you want. It consists in not being a slave to your emotions. The monk discovered that not reacting does not mean remaining still. On the contrary, it means acting from clarity. Because whoever masters his mind stops being a victim of the world and becomes his own teacher. Over time, the monk was remembered not for his words. He was remembered for his silence. His calm became legend. Many came to the temple seeking to learn how to remain silent, but they left having learned how to listen. He used to say, "Not reacting is loving in its purest form, because you choose not to return harm, but to transform it into understanding." And when the sun set behind the mountains, the monk smiled with gratitude. He knew he had found something greater than reason peace. Buddha said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." And the monk understood that pausing before reacting is the moment in which one chooses who they will be. Viktor Frankl, centuries later, would summarize that same truth between stimulus and response. There is a space. In that space lies our freedom. There, in that sacred pause, inner power is born. Lesson 8. Not reacting is loving in its purest form. Dear listener, life will test you. There will be words that warn, looks that challenge you, moments that seem unjust. But remember this teaching. Each time you choose not to react, you are creating space for wisdom to speak for you. This is how destiny changes. Not with shouting, it changes with calm. Not with rage, it changes with understanding. Not with impulse, it changes with awareness. Buddha taught, hatred does not cease with hatred. Only with love is it extinguished. The monk understood that forgiving is not forgetting. Forgiving is freeing oneself. Marcus Aurelius expressed it this way: the best revenge is not to be like the one who hurt you. And then the monk discovered that true love is the highest response of the conscious soul. Truly, mastering the mind is conquering the inner universe. Because whoever governs their thoughts governs their destiny. Whoever controls their emotions finds true freedom. Power is not in changing what happens outside. True power is in maintaining calm within you when everything trembles. And when you achieve that, nothing and no one can take your peace away. If this story reached your soul, write in the comments today, "I choose calm over reaction." This action will serve as an anchor to maintain calm in the face of those who provoke you. If you prefer, write your point of view. It will be very useful for the community. I invite you to share this message with someone who needs to find their center and to subscribe to continue this inner journey, because silence also teaches, and the soul that understands it is never the same again. Your growth does not end here. The video you see on screen will take you even deeper on this journey of peace and self-knowledge. Click now and continue your path toward calm and inner wisdom. Thank you for staying until the end. Leave us a comment with your favorite part.